All right, so again, selections. We have our marquee tool, elliptical tool. We have our polygonal lasso, and magnetic lasso. We have our quick selection, object selection, quick selection, magic wand. Regardless, you make that selection and we want to save it. Yes, we go to select and save selection. When we do that, you're going to get the save selection screen. It's going to be for this document, the document that we saved it as, which was selections. And then here's the name, right? So I can do, I don't know, odd squares. Right? I can click OK, and it will save that selection. I can also right-click and select Save Selection. So some of those options from the Select menu are also available when you right-click in that selection. So whether it's Select, Save Selection, or right-clicking, Save Selection, that will allow you to do that. Now, to load a selection, again, for the most part, you're just watching, because you guys already know how to make selections, and now it's just saving and loading. Same way, select, load selection. There's the name of that selection that I just saved, odd selections. I can click OK. Or if I want, I can do select, load selection. Notice that there was an invert option. So now this would invert the selection. So now it's not going to let me do anything in the original selection because I inverted it. Okay. Control D to deselect. So again, from the select menu item, there's lots of different things in here. We're going to go over this throughout the year. But for today, load and save. Now, there was one other thing in there that I wanted to show you with the selection and select. Did anybody notice that there was a transform selection? Yes, I see some of you. Good, you're nodding your heads, yes. What do you think the transform selection allows us to do? Change it. Just like the transform tool from yesterday, right? So, except this is specific to the transforming of the selection. So if I click transform selection, there's my little grippers, my handles. I can now make that or rotate that selection. When I click the green or the check mark, excuse me, there's my selection still there. And again, if I want to save it, I can click select and save selection. Square. So now when I load a selection from this document, there they are, odd squares and squares. And that did I not record that? All right, so we need to go navigate to my learning. Navigate to my learning. Go to this week's module, Photoshop Masks. Download those 3 documents. Learning Mask Layers, Masks, PSD, Chris Pratt Profile, and Monkey Pratt Mask. I want you to pay notice, though, to something. What do you see here? What is that? We haven't worked with this file yet, have we? So what? What is it? Right. It's a Photoshop document. The PSD file is an editable Photoshop document. It's a document in which you could go back in and edit those layers as you're creating a graphic. Okay? So the .psd file is the editable file for Photoshop. A JPEG is just an image. It's a flattened image. It's just all pixels, all mushed together to make some type of visual. There it is. But a PSD file maintains and keeps those layers there for us to work with. All right, moving along. Actually, I'll give you guys a little bit of time to get those open. So you want to open all 3 of those documents. Open all 3 of those documents. All right, so back in Photoshop, we're going to click Open. I'm going to select the range of those 3 images. I'm going to click Open. It's going to open all 3 of those. And this is the document I want to work with first. So I'll be walking around looking to see that you have this document open. It's the Learning Masks, Layer Mask.psd. It's the blue screen that says topped all over it. When you think of the word layer mask or masks in general, what comes to mind? Yeah, it's covering your face. Is that what you said? I think that's what you said. Yeah. Is your entire face covered? No. what are some things that aren't typically covered? Could be your eyes, could be your mouth, maybe even your nose, right? So there's some parts of the mask that you can actually see through. And that's exactly how a layer mask works with visual elements, whether it's in video or it's in still pictures like this graphic here. A layer mask allows us to punch through a layer, punch through an element, and see what's behind it. Okay? And it's fairly simple to create. And we do that by clicking on our layer mask button. And it is located at the very bottom of your screen. So this should not be something that's foreign to us. We already looked at this earlier this year where the trash can here allows us to delete. The little square with the plus sign allows us to add a new layer. We have a little folder. We're going to talk about this folder later about grouping layers. This circle that's halfway filled, halfway empty, is your layer adjustment layers. And then to the left of that is a square with a hole in it, or a circle. This is your layer mask button. We're going to click on that with the top layer blue layer selected. And then this is what should happen if you're watching. Here we go. All right, what happens when we click on that? What happened? You can just describe to me what you saw on your screen or what you saw on my screen. What happened? What changed? What's different? Yeah, you added something to the top layer blue. What was added there? A little white what? A little, well, it's not a layer. It's a little white thumbnail or a little white box, right, that gets added to that layer. That little white box is your layer mask. Okay, it is attached to that specific layer, top layer blue. If you haven't done this, go ahead and do this. I want you to add a layer mask to the top layer blue. All right, so here we go, ready for the next step. Now, with layer masks, there's two colors and probably a range between those colors that are important to us, and that's white and black. White conceals, right? What is white concealing right now? No, I can see the top layer. It's blue. So right now, what is it concealing? Say it louder. Yeah, the bottom, the bottom layer, the yellow layer, right? That bottom layer, yellow. Well, naturally, Webster, like, what are you talking about? Like, it's already doing that. Yes, but without that layer mask, I wouldn't be able to punch through and see it without destroying some pixels. We're going to talk about that here in a second. So just watch my screen. You're just watching. So all you're doing is just watching. All right, so white conceals, black reveals. So watch. I'm going to use my paintbrush. And I'm going to use the color black. And I'm going to paint on this thumbnail here. Look at what happens. Don't do this yet. Just hang tight because I want to show you the difference between something here. Notice how I painted on the thumbnail, the layer mask. I can see white is concealing, black is revealing. What's black revealing? What's revealing what's below it? What's below it? That's that bottom layer yellow. Now, that is much different. Watch what happens if I do it this way. Undo, undo, undo. There we go. Black paintbrush. Uh-oh. What happened? Where did I go wrong with this? Yeah, I had selected the original layer itself, not the layer mask. This will happen, I promise you. Some of you are going to make this mistake. You need to make sure that you can identify the layer mask. Make sure that you're working with the layer mask before you start doing anything. Otherwise, you're going to get that result. Also, on a side note, I'm going to undo this. Right here, let me delete that guy. This is not a layer mask. That is not a layer mask. But it does the same thing. Well, yeah, you're right. It does do the same thing as a layer mask. But that is not a layer mask. It's not a layer mask because, one, I can't see it in the layers menu panel. But two, I destroyed those pixels. I completely removed them. I deleted them. They're gone. I erased those pixels. That's considered a destructive edit. You need to write this down. You're going to get some questions that talk about destructive and non-destructive edits. What I did there, that was a destructive edit. A destructive edit is anytime you manipulate or move around or change pixels at the pixel layer, or pixel level, I should say. So if you colorize any pixels, if you move pixels, if you delete pixels, that's a destructive edit. A destructive edit is anytime you edit pixels at the pixel level. A non-destructive edit is where it keeps those pixels intact, but it appears as if they've changed. And of course, that would be the layer mask. That is one example of a non-destructive edit. As we go through the year, I'm going to give you lots of other examples of non-destructive edits as well as destructive edits, and you do need to know the difference between the two. Let me undo that. I'm going to bring back my layer mask. So again, this is a non-destructive edit. Why? I didn't destroy any pixels. I didn't erase any pixels. Yeah, you did. They're gone. No, they're still there, right? If I remove this layer mask, it's there. Okay, so I'm not destroying pixels at the pixel level. I'm using an edit that is non-destructive to those pixels. All right, if you haven't already done this, go ahead and try it. Create your layer mask, which I think you guys already did. Grab the black paintbrush and paint on that thumbnail, well, on your canvas, I should say, making sure that you have the layer mask selected. That's a great question. What if you use a different color other than black? Watch my screen if you would, please. I'm going to come in here. I have my thumbnail selected. So I'm directing you verbally to look at my screen. All right, so I'm going to change my color. So the question was, what happens if you use another color other than black? Well, that's a great question. So I'm going to pick, let's say, red. What did you notice about my color picker here? What did it do? It's gray, right? Doesn't matter what color. Even if I come over and I pick blue, it still is not letting me choose that color. That's because it recognizes that I'm working with a layer mask, and layer masks will only accept colors black, white, and everything in between. So black is a completely 100 transparent. White is completely concealing. So anything in between is going to be a level of opacity, right? So if I use, let's say I go to, and I can come over here and I can use, like here are my grays, right? Like everything over to the left is black, white, and everything in between is gray. So if I use a different variant of gray, or black, I should say, watch what happens. It's not completely 100% transparent. Okay? And if I lighten that even more, again, it's a little transparent, but not completely transparent. And furthermore, if I come over here and I look at my layers panel, notice that it's showing me where I'm painting on that layer mask. So I can see at what levels I am making it transparent versus just some small opacities there. Great question, and that's why. Or that's what I should say. That's what happens. All right, I'm going to give you about 15 seconds to play around with that. I see that you guys are already playing with it. Great, awesome. And then I'll go ahead and stop you, and then we'll go ahead and open up the Chris Pratt and the monkey, which you should already have there, but that's where we're going to head next. All right, here we go. So again, your screen should look like mine. We're looking for Chris Pratt. That's what we're working with. We are, and if you haven't figured it out, we're going to take Chris Pratt and we're going to make him look a little less human. Right? You've heard of the phrase photoshopping, right? So now I know the basics that we've been covering so far has been kind of boring. I get it. Now we're getting into the fun stuff, right? So I promise you, as we continue this process, it's just going to get more and more fun, and you guys can be like, and giggle and laugh, and we're gonna have a great old time. All right. So here we have Chris Pratt. If you remember from yesterday with the beach ball, do you guys remember how we copied the beach ball we copied and pasted? What did we do? We made a object selection. It selected the beach ball, but it left the white background out. Okay. You could do that here, but I want to take this opportunity to show you how to pull in other images into a document. So for example, we want to pull the monkey into the Chris Pratt document. So watching my screen, watching my screen. I'm on the monkey Pratt mask image. I'm going to click and I'm going to hold my mouse button. So I'm going to click, I'm holding that mouse button. I'm clicking and I'm dragging. I'm still holding that mouse button. I'm going to drag it over the Chris Pratt tab. It's going to open up the Chris Pratt image. I'm still holding that mouse button. I'm going to drag this over right on. I'm still holding that mouse button. I'm going to release the mouse. That will place that image on top. Go ahead and do this yourself. I'll walk around, make sure you guys are doing this successfully. Like when we pulled that beach ball in, was it a good size or what did we have to do with it? We had to make it small. We had to scale it down because it was just too big, right? This is the exact opposite. Monkey's too small. So we need to make the monkey bigger, right? What tool did we use yesterday to scale that volleyball or beach ball, excuse me? Right, free transform, right? And we know that the shortcut for the free transform is Control T, Control T. So with layer 1 selected, and before I do anything here, I am going to double click on layer 1. I am going to call this monkey because we do want to have good practice here with managing our layers. So there's monkey. Also, I want to help myself here, right? Like I'm trying to line up the monkey's face with Chris's face. In order to do that, I kind of need to be able to see through that layer. So if you look over on your layers panel, I've mentioned this before, we're going to mention it again. If you go to your layers panel, you should see, based on what you have selected, right? We have blend modes, and we also have opacities. With the opacity, that allows us to select the monkey layer and change the opacity so that we can see through it, okay? Now this would be another example of a non-destructive edit because we're not physically touching those pixels, we're giving it an appearance of that. Okay, so with the monkey layer selected, I'm going to take this opacity, I'm going to drop this down to about 43, something like that, 40-something%. Anywhere in there should work. But I need to be able to see both the monkey's eyes and Chris's eyes, and I think that works fairly well there. And obviously, like you guys said earlier, I need to make this guy much bigger. So yes, Control T for the transform tool. And now I'm going to stretch and try to make this big so I can match up his eyes. Now, if you're having problems, what I call squishing, I don't have a technical term for it, but if you're having a problem squishing these pixels, right, it's probably because your constraints have been set. So at the top of your screen, under your options toolbar for that tool, you should see width and height, W and H, and there's a little chain link there. If that chain link is clicked on, then it's going to stop you from squishing those pixels. It's going to keep the proportionalities constrained. So we want to make sure that that's unselected so that way we can really stretch these pixels around. So again, I'm just trying to match up his eyes. It doesn't have to be perfect. We're just going to try to get that as close as we can. We'll try to line his mouth up as well. And it looks like I need to just tilt this a little bit. So I'm going to, above those handles, I'm going to click and I'm going to rotate it just a little bit. Looking pretty good right about there, I think. There, I'm happy with that. And I'll change that opacity back to 100%. And I'll hit enter to accept those changes. And I'm going to hold right there. Come around, make sure you guys are able to do that. All right, so we have our monkey layer on top of our background. Remember our background, we want to keep that intact. So let's go ahead and duplicate the background. How do you guys duplicate a background? Do you remember how we do that? Right click and then select duplicate layer. Background copy is okay because that's what it is. Now I do want this background copy to be on top. So I'm going to click on background copy. I'm going to drag it on top. Okay. So now this is what my screen should look like, right? You didn't like that. Come on. Oh, looks like I lost my tool. All right, so this is what my screen should look like. I have the background copy. I have my monkey. and then I have the background itself. Okay. Now it's the background copy that I want to make the what? Say it, yeah. Yeah, the layer mask. I want to make the background copy my layer mask because I'm going to punch through it, revealing what's behind it, which is the monkey. So it's the background copy that I'm going to create as the layer mask. If you remember that from when we practiced with the blue and yellow layers, it's the square with the circle in it. I'm going to select that, and there's my layer mask. And now, and this is a good time to just watch my screen here, right? So what has Webster done so far? I have background copy selected. You're watching my screen. I have background copy selected. I'm going to click on the Add Layer Mask button. There's my layer mask. And now, with my paintbrush and the colored black, as well as the settings for my hardness, remember the hardness, this shows up much better if you have 0% on your hardness. And I might make my brush just a little bit bigger. Now watch. Okay, so I'm not taking my brush and I'm just like stroking it, right? Like I'm not going to just make these big wide strokes. I'm just coming in here with very small, you can see all how I'm undoing it, right? Just very small touches of the brush to kind of make what I'm trying to do. So that's a click and a drag, click and a drag, click, small clicks, 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 just creating that illusion here. Click, 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 right? Now, again, black reveals at 100%, and if I come in here and I start using different shades of gray, I can really start to blend this in. Okay, and then I'll come back with a little bit lighter gray. I might even make my brush a little bit smaller. And even more lighter gray. And I might even come back in here with some very close to white just to kind of clean this up a little bit. So if you look at my screen here, you'll see that it's not just, I mean, obviously you could certainly just use just black and just white, but you'll see that with some, adjustments of those blacks and whites and grays, you can get a much better desired effect from using that mask, trying to reveal something from behind. So again, if you're looking at that thumbnail for that layer mask, you can see that it's a series of blacks and grays and light whites, or dark whites, I guess I should say, to get that desired effect. Okay, so that's a layer mask. Questions on a layer mask? Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Again, it's always remembering to make sure that you have the correct thumbnail selected to make sure that you are in fact creating that mask. Otherwise, you're painting pixels, and we don't want to do that.